most.
Right. That's like what you're focused on right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to like hobbies are like, it's like a passion.
Yeah.
Like I have a lot of hobbies and I love them all and I don't have any time to do them.
Right.
And so that's what, like, this is part of, like, as, like, I'd like to pick this up as a hobby of learning about other people's hobbies because I don't get to hobby a lot because I work full time. I'm a student, a family man. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Not a lot of free time.
Yeah.
So that's part of the intro. You know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's literally like, thank you for tuning into Old Dog New Tricks.
Woof.
I'm your host. Woof. That's great. I'm your host, Justin. I sit down with interesting people who do interesting things. Or I sit down with people who do things. You know what I'm saying? Which one are you going to be? Let's find out.
That's great.
No, I think it's literally like it's a podcast that stems from like my want for. I love doing things that are outside of the 40 hours a week, that are outside the expected. You know, I'm an artist, and I love to see how people flex their creativity in hobbies, be it, you know, music, movies, art, games. You know, I'd love to dive into all sorts of people, like leaders in their field.
Right.
I don't know any leaders in any field, so you know, what is a hobby?
Yeah.
Is baseball a hobby?
I think so.
Like playing sports is just a hobby. Right?
I think everything's a hobby if you enjoy doing it, you know? Because I think at a certain point, if you don't enjoy it, it's not really a hobby anymore.
Right. No.
Because
Why would you do it?
I don't make coffee as a hobby, but there are people who do that, you know?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That is true.
And it would be neat if my hobby also made me money, but I'm not, like, at home.
I've been wondering what that noise is in the background for 50 minutes. It's because my dryer is running, and I'm so sorry. It's been in our recording.
Well, it adds a layer of humanity.
This is real life. We could also just close the door.
Damn, you're so smart, dude.
Just let me close the door.
He's gonna go close the door.
But that's what I just kind of want to, invite people in and learn about, you learn about what people do. Aspen, are you in or out? Let's get my chair.
The cat is in.
The cat is in.
She's cat alone.
So, what do you do?
Well, a lot of things. I once said that I'm much like Thanos, except instead of collecting Infinity Stones, I collect hobbies.
Okay.
I am trying to wipe out half the universe, but that's not related.
Different goal.
That's not a hobby. That's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
No, I think the most prominent hobby in my life of my many is TTRPGS, tabletop role-playing games.
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
And owns my life a little bit sometimes.
That's nice. That's a good hobby.
Yeah.
A lot of things to do with it. How did you start doing that?
Oh, so my my dad was really into Dungeons and Dragons when he was in college, but we grew up hearing stories about it. But my dad's like, nah, you guys go play outside instead. But then Josiah, my eldest brother, he went to he was in middle school, but he came home and he's like, I got the rules to D&D. Don't tell Dad. And then
like bootleg? Or
yeah,
but
but the thing is, he didn't have the rules of D&D, so he made up his entire own system.
Oh wow!
And we played this really awful version of the game that I think if I tried to play it as an adult now, it would be a nightmare. Sure. But we would just sit up late at night, just rolling dice, and it was all D6s because we stole the dice from a Yahtzee box.
Yeah,
and we were up there, and the thing is, like, when my dad found out we were doing this, he literally didn't care. But we were acting like it was such a big deal because Dad was always just like, oh yeah, I used to play Dungeons & Dragons. It's kind of stupid. Because my dad's he's an athlete guy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he had a bunch of nerds as kids.
Very funny. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's where it all started.
I guess I didn't know that it started with your dad, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Just kind of passed down.
Yeah.
How has that evolved over the years to become what it is now? Like, you started from a version of D&D that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. That's a hobbyman's dream to create his engine, and teenager was like, I have the rules.
Right. Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And there's it's been interesting going through the entire journey, because it's gone from being something that's very like not popular to suddenly, if you're good at this, you can sell out Madison Square Garden. Like, that's something that happens now, you know? But no, I think it was like a couple years later, we finally got the rules to 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, and that's where it really started. Because the previous was, we would rotate who was the game master or the dungeon master, and we would just roll 6-sided dice and go, oh, this happens or whatever. But when we got a little bit older, where rules started to make more sense and we could check each other on that kind of stuff, and it just became this thing that pretty much every single day, and I mean like every single day, we would sit down and we would just go, okay, this is the dungeon that the game gave to us. And I think we probably did the pre-made dungeon like 30 or 40 times, until Josiah had this realization of going, oh, we can make our own stories.
Yeah.
We can make our own characters.
I can do this, yeah.
And it was like instant crack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was this... I know we're focused on this hobby, but you are a storyteller and an author. Was this kind of the realization of that? Like, oh, I can actually, like... This is where I like putting pen to paper.
Yeah, I think so. When I was a kid, I talk a lot. I'm a big yapper kind of guy. But when I was a kid, we would always do this thing, because we lived in a pretty small house, so all the siblings slept in the basement together, and it was a very big basement with. It's kind of like Kayla had the Harry Potter room, Josiah was out in the main room, and Mike and I had a side room, but it was all essentially a long hallway. And every night, like, we would do story time, and I would just tell a story to my siblings. And then as time went on, and I mean, that started before we started playing D&D, I would just like talk about whatever, and Micah would get annoyed and fall asleep because he hates me. Yeah. But then when we got Dungeons and Dragons, it gave a framework of, I can trick people into listening to my stories and they can participate in it, you know?
Yeah.
And over the years, that's refined more and more and more until, I mean, it's still refining, but yeah, I think the main draw of it has always been, oh, this is a catalyst for storytelling.
Right. It's a channel that you get to tell your stories in.
Yeah.
How has that, in today's modern age, you do, like, your hobby has lifted you to you went viral.
It's true. I
literally a month ago or so, which is crazy, and it's based around this. What changed in the landscape of D&D for that to be able to be a thing? Yeah,
I think there was. I call it the trifecta. There's 3 things that happened, in my opinion. We had Stranger Things come out, and they had to put Dungeons and Dragons in there because it was such an iconic thing. The Duffer Brothers also played a lot of D&D during that time. So they're like, okay, we're going to insert this. So at that point, everyone's like, oh, that show is cool. Maybe the game isn't as bad as I thought it was. Then this how am I blanking? Oh, Critical Role. There's Critical Role had been started, I think, prior to Stranger Things, but had been slowly amassing a following because they were all famous voice actors before they were Critical Role. So they had a built-in following that started slowly amassing more and more people. But I think the true, just like, fire to the gasoline was COVID, because suddenly everyone's at home, nobody knows what to do, and then you have that one friend who's like, you guys want to hop online, you know, through Zoom or whatever, or Roll20, actually more accurately, but you want to hop on and I can teach you how to play this game. And it was like, and it's escapism, you know? So I think all 3 of those things, there was a couple of primers in place. And then when COVID happened, it was like, okay, well, people were like looking for an outlet to get them away from the nonsense that they were living, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's yeah. It's that personal connection that you get from playing the game,
right?
You know, characters and storytelling, and a lot of human traits inside of a lot of fantasy, which is the escapism really does make a difference on that.
Yeah, it takes you for a walk, you know.
So what do you do in the context of D&D that has helped you like become viral? I've watched some videos, but you know, right. I know what it is, but like, what are you striving for?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that before I started this D&D TikTok, I've always known that like Dungeons and Dragons, like I'm good at it. I know I'm very comfortable with it, and I think comfortability with something translates a lot of times into ease of use. Like, I'm at a point that I know what I'm doing with it. And so if a player throws me something wild at me, I'm like, whatever, I can go with whatever. But it was getting onto TikTok, and I watched a couple of videos, and I was like, oh, that's funny. I'm like, I can make content like that. And so I started making content, and I think it's a crossroad of shared experience and also like, oh, I do know what I'm doing. And that's where trying to include my own homebrew into it helps a lot. But it's like with anything, if you spend 20 years of your life working at it, there's a certain level of skill that you will gain in it. And with this, I'm like, there's still so much to learn, because it's not just a game. It's this weird social interaction of it's like such a weird little thing of like team building and leadership and storytelling and math and all this stuff just meshed together. So it's just such a fascinating platform. But over the years of just doing it constantly, I come to a point where I was like, oh, and I still have this almost imposter syndrome of like, well, I'm not Brennan Lee Mulligan, I'm not Matt Mercer, you know, I'm not these big names, you know, and there's plenty of other dungeon masters and players that are like that. But then realizing, going, well, I have spent a lot of time doing this, and being okay with the idea of like, you know, my opinion and thoughts do matter, because I have spent so much time doing this. And maybe there's somebody who's just gotten into the game that can benefit from me going, hey, by the way, buy a DM screen and hide your dice rolls, because you don't want to kill your party the first session. Yeah.
That gives you the ability to have mercy.
Yeah.
So I think it's a two-part question, but if you're talking to a hobbyist who's just getting into D&D, what's your advice to a player first, and then a person who's like, I'm running my first game?
For players, this is not a competitive game. This is a cooperative game. And even with a storyteller, with a dungeon master especially, it's a cooperative game. The more you try to trip up, there's an art to it. If you get good enough as a player, there are moments where it's like tripping up the DM is awesome. Like there's a couple of players that I have that when they do it, I'm like, that was awesome, because they have a good sense for it. Don't do that when you first start. When you first start, come up with at least a concept of what you want to do with your character, talk with your dungeon master, and work with them to make the story. Because the thing is, essentially, your dungeon master has written a book, and you get to play a character in their book. And the cool thing is, you can make decisions that no character in a book would have ever made. And so it's like you're working together to reach this victory, you know? And sometimes the best stories, I've had people who've played characters going, I think it would be really cool if my character went out with a bang, you know? Like, I want that death scene. And it's like, okay, cool. Now that I know that, we can create that scene. And the rest of the table's like, wow, that's incredible that we can't believe we did that. Or, you know, or just like incorporating some sort of artifact into your backstory that you eventually find, you know, like you want to be King Arthur. Cool, we can work with that. So I think if you're a new player on the scene, don't try to trip up your dungeon master. Work with your dungeon master. And also don't just try to murder your fellow players, because I guarantee you one of them has optimized their character and it's just not going to end well for you. But I think that's the main thing with players is like you will get so much more out of the story if you work with the people around you rather against the people around you.
Yeah.
Because it might create a haha moment just for you, but the social contract of D&D is like, we have agreed together to make a story.
Yeah.
And part of that is welcoming the fact that sometimes you are the main character, sometimes you're not.
Yeah.
But all of it is always just trying to support each other. I mean, I've had so many tables where someone's like, well, I did this because, it makes it harder for the dungeon master. And just to be straight up level, it does not make it harder for me. I have never had a player do something that I'm like, I could literally 180 this on you so fast because the rules are in my control.
Right.
But with the players who do the clever thing, who do a clever trip up, I'm like, oh, that's way more interesting. Mm-hmm. But again, it goes back to, you have to have a good sense of story and you have to have a good sense of how the game works. And to get those two things, a lot of times it starts with, I'm a character in this world. Show me how to make my character. Show me how to play this world. Show me how to do this thing. And again, you get much more reward out of that. For dungeon masters, say yes way more than you say no. So many dungeon masters are terrified of allowing their players to become too overpowered. And I say, let them. Just literally let them. This game is going to end at some point, whether because of scheduling conflicts or because the game just wraps up,
Yeah.
And again, you have control over stats. What I would recommend is like, if your party seems really overpowered, throw a tester boss at them. Mm-hmm. If they annihilate it, take your big bad evil guy and make them really overpowered.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things, though. It's like, the no is a powerful tool, but you have to know when to use it. Generally speaking, just say yes and let the players experience the world. And learning, and part of it is learning what to give them and what not to give them. Like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have given them this weapon because it's way too overpowered. Cool. Now know that for next time. You don't have to shoot down every great idea, because a lot of times some of the best story decisions are because a player did something you weren't expecting them to do. Like, I was just doing my D&D campaign with this group last night, and a character stole an object from an organization they work for that I was not expecting him to do that. Mm-hmm. He rolled really well, and I said, fine, you do it. And rather than going, and then the guards show up, or then this happens, I was like, okay, how do I reintegrate you in? How do I integrate the scene into the plot to make it more interesting? Mm-hmm. And now his character there's a race against time happening that's so much more interesting for his character because it's tied back into his backstory. And that's why it's just saying yes to these things, allowing your players to do these things. And obviously, again, you can say no. But I think it's just more powerful to say yes. So.
Yeah. First rule of improv. One of the rules.
Yes and.
I don't.
Master the yes and before you say the no but.
I didn't go to improv school. Is there a school for improv?
Yeah, it's right next to clown school.
It's like conjuration school, destruction school, improv school.
Yeah. You've been playing a lot of Oblivion, huh?
I've been playing a lot of Oblivion.
You said destruction. I'm like,
destruction immediately. School.
Yeah.
Your knowledge isn't just D&D based.
No.
You can, like you brought up at the beginning, it's tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, if somebody's listening to this and they know what D&D is, but that's all they know, D&D is just one of the many engines that drive tabletop gaming these days.
Yeah.
What? I want to drive this question to open up to like outside of D&D, but I think it's just like I know you've like written your own like games. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have little challenges for yourself.
Yeah.
That you've told me about, and I want you to kind of bring that up and describe how the engine of D&D has brought you to a completely, it's an open landscape of what you can do to play with your friends.
Yeah.
How do you express that as a dungeon master outside of D&D?
Like, what other systems have I used, or just
Yeah, I guess we could start there. Like,
Yeah.
where else do you go after D&D?
Yeah.
Which isn't to say like D&D is not great, and it has its place, but there's a lot of other options out there.
Yeah. D&D, especially 5th edition, my biggest compliment is my biggest complaint with it is the system is very simplistic, and I think it works very well for what it does. And so if people live in 5th edition for the rest of forever, that's fine. Like, and it's, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a game where you roll dice and you play make believe with your friends. So if this is the catalyst you use, this is the catalyst you use. But the own system that I've designed, it's taken so many attributes of so many different games. I mean, I've taken a little bit from here, a little bit from there. And the cool thing about tabletop role-playing games is now that they're more accessible, more widely accepted, a lot of them have such good overlap that even if you're learning, it's like you play a system, you learn it, you go, cool, but what more is there? You can learn a new system, and there's like, oh, there's an overlap enough that I can understand it and dive into the next one.
Yeah.
So, like Pathfinder 2 is a great example of that. You can, I would say, for those who like more complicated rule sets, but that aren't insane, it's a good transition from 5th edition over to Pathfinder 2. But it's, especially if you're a dungeon master, learning other systems, I think, is super important. Or not just important, just it's like a fun thing to do, because it gives you an opportunity to see these other systems, because there's so many ideas that people have come up with that you can go, oh, I can pull that straight into my system. I mean, the version of 5th edition that I play at my table is not D&D 5th edition.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The foundation is there so my players understand what they're doing.
You use like the core rule book.
Yeah.
And then you just house rule it on a lot of stuff.
And a lot of the house rules are based on things that other people wrote.
Right. Right.
And so now I have this amalgamation, this like hodgepodge nonsense that when you said, if you played 5th edition your entire life and sat down at my table, you'd be like, I see the shape. Mm-hmm. Why are they doing these things? Like, oh, because I stole from Pathfinder, I stole from GURPS, I stole from Torg, I stole from like all these other games.
Yeah.
So I think like for people who want to do this game more and more, it's just like there's so many resources to choose from that staying in just D&D 5th edition, you can do that and that's totally fine. But there's just so much more out there that you can borrow from or just straight just shift into.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's fast. It really is fascinating how much there is out there, because I remember when I first started playing, and it's kind of silly, but the first time we sat down, my brothers and I, and played like an RPG was Star Wars.
Yeah.
It was the Star Wars role-playing game. I think it's just what it was called.
Yeah.
I don't remember what edition or anything. I think it was modeled off of 3.5. D&D 3.5.
Yeah.
But I don't remember. I'm sure my brothers could tell you.
Yeah.
But it ruled. And it's how I learned the D20 system. And it had all the aliens from the movies.
Yeah.
And like all their stats and stuff. It was sick. I mean, it was insane. But I think I'd played that before I played D&D. And then that's kind of, we played that for a while and then just ended up at 5e at some point.
Yeah.
But the ability to take like those, you look at that book and you look at those stat blocks and you look at the aliens and you look at the starships you have and whatever, can literally translate to D&D and the dungeons and the, like, there's all sorts of just, it's the same, not even the same formula, but it's the same idea that you can just transfer right into, and it's unlimited. It's fascinating. And it hurts my brain sometimes. But I think what drives me personally, like from what I see of you, is your ability to drive that game and make a player have an absolute blast at your table is such an incredible skill. I've experienced it firsthand. You know, we go into the podcast thinking like, this is a hobby I want to understand, but I understand where you're coming from completely, and I love what you do. Like, it's weird being a big fan of like, you know, like what you do, but you do it absolutely flawlessly. Of being able to build a game that people want to play, especially when it's like 5e. I got a lot of qualms with 5e.
Yeah,
I think, you know, it's just I've played it a lot. And there's a lot of things it does nicely and a lot of things that it doesn't do so great. And you have chopped off the rough edges and made it a nice game. And it's incredible that that's still what people do to this day. I'm sure your dad was playing in the 80s and was like, this is a great game. We could do better. It's just fascinating. And to learn that your brother got a hold of it and was like, this is the game we're playing, and it wasn't even a real game. It's insane.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And I think it's just a tale as old as time of just like this. I mean, just people entertaining themselves and telling a story. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think you do a great job of it.
Thank you, man.
We could go on forever about D&D. I mean,
I probably could. Yeah.
You have a vast knowledge of it and an incredible experience with it. Is there any, I don't even want to say final points, but just like extra points that you want to hit on the spectrum of what people should understand about what you do?
Right. I think the big thing is always prepare and always improvise. And I have so many, like, I have run an entire campaign where I've improvised the entire thing. I've run a campaign where I have the entire thing static. And it always falls in the middle between those two is the best campaigns. Take the time to prepare. And it could be the most bare minimum thing ever. Just draw a dungeon with some monsters in it. You know?
There's a lot of tools these days that you can just go in and...
There is a lot of tools.
Draw a map, dude.
Back in my day, we didn't have that.
Hand-drawn.
But for Dungeon Masters, make the game that your players want to play. I have a guy at my table who just wants to beat things up. I have a guy at my table who just wants to go on these long-winded conversations with NPCs. They sit at the same table. So just finding that balancing point. So like telling a story where there's enough combat and enough talking. But it's just, we, as a dungeon master, just understand like, I am telling my story, but for them, you know. It's for the players. I am here for the players. And if the story that you're telling for the players is not working, reassess and renegotiate what it looks like. Because the idea is to give them an experience that they're going to talk about, you know?
Right.
And for players, don't fight the Dungeon Master. Like, you can fight. There's so many things to fight.
There's a lot of things.
So many things.
There's a whole tome of monsters.
Like, as it turns out. Yeah. And... I'm for being a player, just that's it. Just don't fight them. Just go on the journey. And I know there's someone talks about, well, is Railroad or Sandbox, like what's like, shut up. Just who is your character? What's the story that you want to tell? Don't fight the DM. And if you do that, I like the stories that you can create. I mean, last night I dropped a reference to an old campaign. And I looked over, and one of my players just like jaw open was just like, "Oh my god, that's crazy!" And I'm like, "That's what I live for. That for like this game, that's what I live for."
Yeah,
is I seeded something 2 years ago in a different campaign.
Yeah.
And write things down. And
absolutely. As a DM,
down.
Write them down.
Yeah.
Well, as a player too. Yeah,
exactly. But fast forward to now, they were like, "Oh my god, you planned this the whole time," and behind the scenes, not really. I had an empty detail.
Jotted a quick note
that you guys didn't pursue. And then I was sitting there one day going, well, what would happen if you guys hadn't pursued this end? What would happen if nobody stopped these people from doing whatever? And now we have a whole thing, you know? Wow. So I'm going to go way off track here.
Go.
Yeah. But for Dungeon Master, it's just like, don't be afraid of just throwing little empty details. I love doing like, oh, you find a gemstone that glows. Well, what does it do? I don't know.
Let's find out.
And then like 3 sessions from now, oh, there's a dragon statue and it's missing one of its eyes. What kind of gemstone? What's the other eye? Oh, it's an opal. Oh, I have an opal. Oh, that's crazy. I planned this the whole time.
Yeah.
And I just, it's a game where you have to relax into it. And as a dungeon master, let your players be overpowered. Let them run around the world. Let them be amok. And there will come a point, though, where the payoff is just incredible. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the payoff is the entire game, test your players so that the final confrontation feels worth it.
Yeah.
And I know that there's a certain level of storytelling that you have to master. But I truly believe that if your intention is the players get to tell their story in your story, you're going to achieve what you're looking to achieve. And for the players, as long as you're not trying to just trip your dungeon master at every corner, like the story that you want for your character is going to unfold in a way that you couldn't imagine. I mean, I write books, and in part of writing those books, I'm in an echo chamber. It's just me, I know what I'm going to do with these characters, and even if like it changes as I write the story, it's just me, Yeah. Whereas with Dungeons and Dragons, we have the ability and the art to do it together. So let's do it together. We don't have to fight each other.
Yeah.
But yeah,
incredible. It just talking about it makes me want to play a game.
Hell yeah,
it's just crazy.
Let's go.
Just feels right. Like that's
yeah. Oh, don't worry, I'll get you in. I'll get you in on it.
I didn't expect that to sit down and like talk about it and then be like inspired to get into it. But that's perfect. That's kind of what I wanted out of the podcast, is to inspire other people to get into something, find something that they want to do.
Right.
I'm just a guy who's exploring what other people like to do.
Yeah.
Because I like hearing you talk about your passions. That's insane.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. And it's like things I've heard, I've heard you say this multiple times, but it still just brings me a lot of joy to hear you.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has their thing, and
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Turns out I like talking about people's passions.
Hell yeah.
Insane. So should we roll up some characters and
let's go, baby.
Segues into no.
Segue into a whole campaign.
Wow. No, that's
we'll save that for the other podcast.
Oh, yeah. I don't have an intro or an outro for this podcast, but I just assume something will develop at some point.
Yeah, sure.
We better plug your TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Go.
So you can find me on TikTok. I'm going to go on other platforms eventually, but right now I'm just on TikTok as 5 ever DM.
5 ever DM.
Yeah, I said almost.
Why do you call yourself that?
Well, because 5 ever is one more than 4 ever. Think about it, right?
What year is it? That's incredible.
Yeah, isn't that great?
You brought it back.
I brought it back,
dude. It feels like such an old emo thing. Is that That's I was like, it's got to be an old emo thing.
It's an old emo thing.
Ever.
If you were around on Facebook and MySpace circa the 2000.
Love you, 5
I'm gonna stop. Actually,
don't date yourself. But he's using the terminology 5 ever, so just keep that in mind.
Keep that in mind.
5 ever DM.
So, but
you're trying to crack open some homebrews on your Patreon.
Yeah. I've we talked about it in the other podcast, but yeah, I have a lot of homebrew that I've worked over the years, and I just need to put it to paper that you guys can actually see. But it's mostly comedy memes, and I sneak in some craft stuff. But
that's awesome.
If you get on there, it'll probably see sticker shopping.
We didn't even talk about your physical, like you build dungeons.
Yeah,
you have blocks and minis.
Yeah, so
something we didn't even we skirted right by it. It's an imaginary game, but
we somehow skirted past.
Really helps with. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can really get into. Maybe there's a part 2 D&D episode.
I mean, we could do a part 2.
It really is a sprawling universe.
Yeah, and when you spend, I don't know, again, 23 years or so,
incredible
doing it. After a while, you get bored of something, so you add something onto it. So
the spice of life.
The spice of life.
Variety.
Amen, brother.
Incredible.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for telling me about your hobby.
Yeah, thanks for letting me yap at you.
And your passion.
Yeah.
Hobby feels weird now that I say it. Like it, there's an amount of passion around it. But I guess that's, when someone cares about their hobby.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Ah, man.
Thank you for listening to Old Dog's New Tricks. Oof. Old Dog New Tricks? Yeah. I guess I'm just one dog. Luke might stick around, I'd love for you to
I'm not going anywhere.
You can co-host every so often,
Yeah,
but
it's fun.
Old Dog New Tricks, I explore everybody else's hobbies. Because, man, do I miss mine. Thank you for tuning in. This has been Old Dog New Tricks. Bye.
That's a wrap.